whatever they have to say about the painting. I have had people say if the painting's dark and it's difficult for them, I don't like paintings that have pain in them. And I just go along with it. Well, there's a lot of pain in the world. I paint some of it. You live some of it, and that's, you don't like it, of course. But this is a reflection of what I see out in the world. It's not like I'm going to make it nice. I know a lot of painters in San Francisco. I know a lot of painters in the Central Coast who only do nice work, and maybe they sell more quickly than I do. They do small, nice things that you can stick in the trunk of your car, they say, so that they can make some money. That's fine. That's not what I do. I try to get you to see the world when you're viewing this art, and I want you to think, I want you to feel. And if you don't want that hanging in your living room, I've had people tell me that. They say, I really like your art. I like the colors and the forms. I like the people in them. But I don't think I would want that hanging in my living room every day. I wouldn't want to be reminded of what you're talking about. And I feel perfectly okay by that. I also painted Man in Bathtub in Mexico. The tiles were so beautiful. This one's in Paso Robles, I think, at a house. Very wonderful. It's looking down from above. A guy's in the bathtub. But the tiles are gorgeous in the water, reflecting and all this. Mexico has such great tiles. I try to get there every winter for a month, sometimes less, sometimes more. But it revives me a lot to be in San Miguel de Allende. I like the people, I like the culture, I like the colors, I like the oldness, I like the fact that people are happy. And I hope that some of this comes out in the paintings as well. I then did work that was allegorical and large, because I got into large after 5 years. And I did Dream State, which is wonderful. The sky's floating through the space, and all these spirits of people, 3 women, 1 guy, and an angel, are overlooking his transition, I would say, probably into the next world. Wonderful faces to look at, wonderful to think, what are they doing for this man? He seems to have been a good person, but he's fairly young, I would say in his 30s. And then I did one at the seashore, a large painting, 8 by 5, probably 8 by 6, or maybe 10 by 6. I'm not good on measurements. Husband and wife nude at the beach with a child nude, who is being seduced, so to speak, by the god of the sea. The god of the sea is offering him a seaweed. The parents are paying no attention to the child, as is often the case in this country, leaving him open for seduction. And I'm not meaning that in a physical way. I'm meaning what seduces us: money, power, beauty. I think beauty is probably the most important thing to me in this life. Looking at the physical beauty of people and places, painting the physical beauty of people. I often paint ugly people, but I'm aware that there's beautiful people as well. I'm very attracted to that part. And these paintings got bigger and bigger, and I had hoped to find a chapel in San Miguel de Allende on somebody's ranch and volunteer to paint the whole thing, because I visited some of the ranches, found that they have about 300-year-old chapels that have nothing on the wall, because if they did at one time, they're painted over. And they're personal family chapels. I know of one I'd really like to paint. I would like to spend every year that I go there working on the wall and do all the Christianity, biblical things for them. I painted Christ suffering with Mary holding him, kind of a pietà, with little peasants looking excuse me, looking on as you might in the Renaissance. So I've done a lot of figurative work, mostly figurative work, other than the brief period of doing the still lifes, usually table with objects and flowers and a few other objects like bird on the flower and a couple of things. One in particular has a American flag tablecloth, very faded, but it's just like they threw it on there and it faded, and it's probably the better one I ever did. And someone has it in their home, I'm sure. I always think this way about art. I know that much art will be destroyed. It always has been historically. It just disappears, never to be found again. I've painted 168 paintings in my life. Not a huge output, of course, compared to some of the famous people who painted, in my opinion, too much. And especially did too many prints. I can think of a couple artists of last century who did over 200,000 prints a piece. I don't think that's necessary. They're flooding the world for what reason? But I think those artists who did very little, so to speak, and then some of that got lost, I admire them most. They have examples of their work are still around, but 40 of them maybe, some of them 10, 11. But they're great paintings and worthwhile. So maybe the gods were kind to them and got rid of all the junk that they painted. The clunkers, as I once read about Monet, art critics said, well, don't think everything he did was wonderful because he did a lot of clunkers too. We don't want the clunkers. I think, if I recall, Francis Bacon tended to shred and destroy his clunkers. So in his opinion, the ones that were clunkers, perhaps the rest of us would have preferred he kept some of those. But mine are out there. I have given some to charity, a few. So they're out there. And people's homes are, perhaps they'll be destroyed over time. What I'm hoping for is the very finest work that I've done in this life will be preserved in people's homes and eventually perhaps in museums. And that those few who make it through 200 years or 100 years will actually be the ones that should remain and are the very best work I've done and the ones that I want to be remembered by. I'll go back to Robert Brown, I mentioned in my other lecture. He told me one day on a telephone conversation, he said, you're very fortunate because you're immortal. And I said, I'm not quite immortal. He said, no, really. The novels you've written and the paintings you've painted will supersede your death. And that's not going to happen to me. I don't have anything that I've created that will go on after I'm dead. And that was a very sobering thought. And I think those of you who are in the arts, are writers, sculptors, architects, remember that you are creating your own immortality, and even in a small way, because we know, all of us know, who have read the art history, that a lot of people aren't appreciated during their life, and of course they become alcoholics and depressed persons and a lot of bad things. But if you get your mind lined up there and realize that you're doing this for everyone, not just yourself, that you are actually creating for the world and lifting, as I said before, lifting the world, you might appreciate what you've done, what you've left, why you lived your life the way you did, without regrets, without bitterness, because the worst thing for any of us is to grow old and be bitter. Thank you.